which causes injury, annoyance, and/or trouble is termed nuisance. Today on Law Express, we discuss public nuisance. Stay tuned. Right after this commercial break, I'll introduce to you our panelists for today's topic. This is Law Express. We'll be right back.
Knowing very well there is a ban on drumming and dancing, you intentionally get up, you drum, just to annoy maybe the chief priest. You're actually challenging authority. That amounts to public nuisance.
Yes. So it means that if you decide to drum with the intent of making sure that you are disturbing the public peace, or you are disturbing the morals or the values of the society that you are in, you are liable for a fine.
There is a neighbor, okay, I'm in the next room. And then what happens is that maybe there is a ban. You're not supposed to be, play music to a certain limit. You go to his room and you say that, oh, can you turn the volume down? When he rather increases the volume, it amounts to public nuisance.
Today on Law Express, we have two private legal practitioners who both happen to also be law lecturers. We have with us Yaose Owusu and Samuel Dubik Mahama. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Law Express.
Thank you for having us.
Today our topic is public nuisance, and we all know that there's private nuisance and there is public nuisance. Although the focus is on public nuisance, I'd rather we just explain our way a little into, what's public and private nuisance is.
In a nutshell, I believe public nuisance may be considered as an interference with people's rights in the public place. Now, the issue would come up would be, how then would you interfere with somebody's rights within a public place? The first test that would come up would be of reasonableness. Whatever you're doing when you're dealing with other people, there must be some form of reasonableness attached to it. If that reasonableness is not there and you go beyond it, then you say to have what? Committed for a form of public nuisance.
No, that's you were talking about. You're talking about public nuisance. That's our focus today, okay? But you have to stick to what private nuisance is. It's between individuals. That's what we are talking about, because you see, our main focus today is public. But what we have to know is that there is public and there is also private nuisance. That is also just a civil matter, just between individuals. But today our focus is what? On public nuisance.
Okay.
And public nuisance, under our Criminal Offences Act, that's Act 29, everything is enshrined in there. And today we'll take the opportunity to discuss some of them. And one of them...
So basically what you're trying to say in simple terms is that an action which operates to be an unreasonable interference to a right which is common to all is what constitutes a public nuisance.
Exactly. What technically we are trying to say is that in every society, it varies. Yeah. Nuisance may be in my community, may not be nuisance in his community, or may not be nuisance in your community. It depends on morals and the values that exist in the community. For example, somebody will say morals are the standards of behavior or principles for rights of the people within a particular society. So then the question is asked, what is morally accepted worldwide, or what would be morally accepted within a Ghanaian, jurisdiction? Yeah. So when we come to Ghana, for example, it has been stated there clearly. And one of them that most of the time causes a problem in our society is during these Gan Homo festivals.
Okay.
Where there's a ban on drumming and dancing, but churches want to drum and dance. People's funerals have to go on. People's outdoorings have to go on. Then where lies the respect of that, of the people's customs and rights? Because let's not forget, we are all visitors in this society. They see us to all have migrated from certain parts of Accra to have come to settle here. Yeah. So flowing from this, you can clearly see that the law is couched in such a way that it's there to protect the people's, morals and values within their society.
On a community-to-community basis.
That is it.
Okay.
So in that regard, if you look at the law, especially on drumming and dancing, it gives you different instances.
Yes, exactly, in the law. It's actually stated, when you drum close to a court, it becomes public nuisance.
That is a sitting court.
That is a sitting court, exactly, because very sure, that's a sitting court, because when you're drumming close to a court, then it amounts to public nuisance. It's enshrined in there, because like you were saying, what it's nuisance in a particular jurisdiction might not be nuisance in a particular jurisdiction.
Even with this case of drumming, when the court is not sitting, it would not constitute nuisance.
That is it.
So
Perfect.
it only becomes operational when there's activity in the court and there's a sitting ongoing. Another could be drumming to challenge an authority or to challenge somebody.
Yes, that's exactly what you were saying. For instance, he was just using this, the example of Homowo. I mean, there's a ban on drumming and dancing, and you, knowing very well there is a ban on drumming and dancing, you intentionally get up, you drum, just to annoy maybe the chief priest. You're actually challenging authority. That amounts to public nuisance, and that's exactly what we are discussing today.
There's also drumming or allowing your house
Let's
in
not
town
forget what he's
to be
saying.
used for drumming.
It's actually punishable by what? For a fine not exceeding 25 penalty units. So
Yes.
it means that if you decide to drum with the intent
Yes, the
of
subject
making
is intent.
with the intent of making sure that you are disturbing the public peace, or you are disturbing the morals or the values of the society that you are in, you are liable for a fine.
Before you took your point, I was trying to point to allowing your house in town or your premises, not necessarily a house, maybe where you live, where you work, to be used for drumming without license or permission. So we're looking at outdoorings, we're looking at parties. So you decide to go and bring your bobobo group and you haven't got a license and you are drumming there in a way that affects the people in that locality. You are opening yourself up for a fine.
Yeah, which is true. Then again, it brings us back to the same issue again. We are not saying you cannot have fun in your house. We are not
intent.
the subject here again is intent.
Yeah.
We are not saying you cannot have fun in your house. You can have fun in your house. You can drum, you can dance, you can play your music, so far as it doesn't interfere with your neighbor. You must have your neighbor at heart.
Yeah.
There should be limitation.
And your rights end where somebody's begin.
Exactly the point.
So if you turn up your volume so loud that with the intent that today I am going to disturb this neighborhood.
I think this is a strict liability thing, in that intent really, I mean, if the thing is loud, you're operating in a way that you know is not reasonable. Whether or not you intended to obstruct
No, there is
or
always the subject of
annoying
continuity.
somebody, you know, that's what I mean.
Well, there is always the subject of continuity. It's not just like you do it once and that's it. You see, you must do it with an intent. Because you see, when you just get up and you hit the drum one, it doesn't cause public nuisance. There is always the subject of continuity.
You're playing the music, your neighbor comes. Oh, can you turn it down?
You turn it down.
You turn it down. That's no problem.
Let me even give you a very funny practical example in the university. There is a neighbor, okay, I'm in the next room. And then what happens is that maybe there is a ban. You're not supposed to play music to a certain limit. You go to his room and you say that, oh, can you turn the volume down? When he rather increases the volume, it amounts to public nuisance.
Yeah.
Do you get it? So there's always that subject. There's a thin line because there's a subject where he raised reasonableness. How do we determine reasonableness? That is very, very important.
Because at the end of the day, if he comes to you and he talks to you and you turn it down, fine. Then it stops there. But if he comes to you and you turn it up, or you turn it down, he leaves, then you turn it back up again. You know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. You understand? So until you decide that, oh, that was not my mindset to disturb everybody, but to tone this thing down, but I got carried away with having fun. It's understandable. It's okay.
Moving away from drumming, there's also this thing where people go and try to disrupt or hinder burial, especially in situations where there are chieftaincy or chieftaincy disputes or some traditional offenses that they claim have been violated. That also operates as a nuisance, and many people do not know this.
Let's look at this carefully. Most of the time, nobody wants to come into contact with a dead body.
Yeah.
Now, this hindrance we are talking about, I believe that it has to do with when the person, they are on their way to bury a dead body.
Okay.
Because the hindrances, maybe if the person is in the morgue, I don't think that one, most of the time, they file documents in courts.
The Act specifically talks about hindrance of burial of the dead.
Okay. So, and that's what I'm saying, that's why it becomes a public nuisance when they are carrying the body to go bury it.
That is the most common instance. But then I've handled a case where somebody, there was a huge battle at the point of burial.
Yeah. That is the hindrance we are talking about.
They wouldn't even let them lower the person into the grave.
That is the instance that we are talking about. Because at the end of the day, this is something that everybody, we've gotten to the point where they want to bury. They want to get it over and done with. so that lives can go on. But you have decided in your infamous wisdom, for whatever reason, that you do not want this person to be buried. You understand? If such a thing is happening and you are holding up the whole service, I think, honestly, it's beyond...
You're now adding the service as well.
Yes, because
he's gone from being on the way to the cemetery back to the service where they do the burial
at
service.
that point in time, it goes beyond you being a normal person. Because what would be your reason for stopping such a whole process?
Oh yes, there are numerous reasons.
There are many
numerous reasons because there are reasons where hold on,
but the law is saying that that's your reason.
Yes, amounts to public nuisance. Yes,
and whatever problem you had, you should have sorted out that problem before the day they decided to bury.
Yes, so you can actually go for an injunction if you don't want that burial to take place instead of going to restrain them personally.
That is the essence of Law Express, to get people to understand that if you get up and for some reason you want to hinder the burial of a dead,
then they should know that they should know that then they'll be opening themselves out. It's a misdemeanor.
For legal action.
Yes.
But the mere fact that it's a misdemeanor does not mean that you may get a fine. The judge may decide to make it a custodial sentence. A misdemeanor is a lower offense. It's not the same as a felony. A felony is something more grievous,
like armed robbery, like murder.
Yeah, so when it comes to misdemeanor, you just be fined, basically.
You just be fined, and maybe in certain instances you may be given custodial sentence, depending on what.
So the difference between a misdemeanor and a grievous offense is the punishment.
The punishment,
and
yes,
the
subject of punishment, the seriousness of the offense.
Yes. I just thought that we have to explain this for our
yes,
viewers to come along with us.
That's very understandable.
There are others also that are that also form nuisance, public nuisance, that is selling unwholesome food.
Very, very important, because you see, that's what is happening. A lot of people, you go to some environments, you see the kind of places they are cooking, and you realize that these places are not places that you can actually cook and eat at that environment. So people will sell food. Sometimes you see that you go to a restaurant or you go to a particular place, and then something like the tomatoes is rotting. Okay, and then they will use that same tomatoes to cook for the public.
But you see,
and it's selling unwholesome food, and it announced to public nuisance.
With the issue of selling unwholesome food, I see that you may not even know at the point of purchase that this is unwholesome food.
But sometimes the environment can tell you.
It's likely to be after you've consumed the food.
I agree with you.
Because of the nature of
But there's also
an
advantage to it too, where there are shops that are selling foods that have expired.
Yes. That's unwholesome food.
That is very
critical. Food. And people like that need to be reported.
Yes.
I don't care how big your institution is.
Because what will happen is that sometimes when you're on the street and driving through traffic, you actually see that there is food that is actually expired, and they are actually selling it on the street cheaper. So, for instance, if the food was 7 cities,
but in that case, this is not a situation of you consenting to buying. You see that the thing is clearly unwholesome.
I mean, I don't think so.
It's not like an expiry date.
If it comes to your notice that it's expired, you have to report the person.
So yeah, you tell the person that this is expired, it smells, and he tells you that is why I'm selling at a cheaper price.
No, but
you still buy it. You can
but the problem is that it's not everyone that is literate. No, but there's not everyone that is literate,
and we need to protect others.
We need to protect others.
I am taking it from the angle of going to the market.
Okay.
You get to the market, you
that
see
is
the
just
tomatoes,
one side of the issue.
Yes, but I'm just bringing your mind to that.
Okay.
I'm sure you're a man and you're likely not to be
frequenting
the my favorite marketplace, Malamata Market.
You may be surprised.
No. Some of us can
I
very
walk to I didn't say you can, but as whether you actually will go there as opposed to go into, a supermarket to shop, I'm talking of a situation where I walk to Malamata Market. I see whole tomatoes looking fresh, and then on the side is a almost rotten one, which clearly may be unwholesome. Then I ask, how much is this and how much is that? They tell me, this is going bad, that's why we're selling it at this price. You cannot, after purchasing, go back to the police to tell them so-and-so is selling unwholesome.
No, you can't.
Because you consented. Yeah. I just thought we have to draw make it clear that people understand.
But that doesn't mean... But you see, there's also a clear difference from somebody who is blatantly selling unwholesome food.
Yeah.
That's why I gave you the example of somebody carrying a product in his shop, which is perishable and has a.
And maybe he even goes on to clean the expiry date so you don't see it.
That is a criminal offense.
Yes, that amounts to
criminal. Growing up, I hail from the Upper West region, and I remember that unwholesome food, like cooked unwholesome food, is usually sold to wayfarers. because they know that you may not be there again after you felt the impact of that. I remember in years past when, you know, traveling by bus from the north and stopping around where your region, that is Bamboy, you know, that's the central point for those going from maybe Accra to Wa. That's where you stop, eat, you know, after your first stop in Kumasi. And the people go to bed. And when they hear the bus, they jump up, and the bad fufu, bad food that was there for several days is what they are heating up.
Actually cooking.
You are a wayfarer, you are so hungry, you are likely to eat that. And then you feel the effects when you are almost, you know,
it amounts to food poisoning and public nuisance. So
the thing is that people in that kind of situation should know that there is a remedy in the law. You can report to the police that so-and-so person stationed at this place is selling unwholesome food, and they will be open to a fine.
The very unfortunate thing is that sometimes you will not be able to identify those people. That's why I said most of the times even sold to wayfarers.
Yes.
And that's the very, very, difficult thing when it comes to some of these things. It's very, very difficult to actually find those people and, report them.
So some people think that getting drunk is a personal thing, it's a choice, it's his money, he's bought his alcohol, he's drunk. But they don't know that there are criminal implications to actually being a habitual drunkard. So where you've been 3 times convicted, okay, of having been drunk and behaving violently or indecently or in a disorderly manner within 1 year from the first conviction, then you are found in any other public place again doing that, you're guilty of a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's express. You do it once, it's fine. Don't forget, the law is clear. It says so. You should have been convicted.
3 times.
So that means your actions should have been so bad that you've been arrested by the police, arraigned before court, convicted, sent home, gone. So if you've done that for 3 times, abba.
So the law actually is giving you a long rope.
There's a long rope.
You should be drunk, behave indecently, violently, disorderly.
But you see, that one is separate. That one is being the habitual drunkard.
Yes.
Flowing from that, then now comes to being drunk and acting in a riotous manner and in a quarrelsome manner.
Yeah.
That one also comes on its own.
And even with that, the second part of being drunk and acting in a disorderly manner, it should be within the confines of the place that the alcohol is being sold.
Exactly. Exactly. But you know, not necessarily. There are sometimes people get drunk. Somebody will tell you, I'm getting drunk to go and face somebody. You understand? So the intent is clearly there. And he wants to blame it on intoxication. It won't fly.
Yeah.
You understand? The moment you decided to take in that alcohol, you know exactly what alcohol does. But sometimes you even take it to the extent where you can say you're impaired.
Especially with situations where people go on weekends to watch soccer. You know, these Premier League matches and all that, men like to go to these places. Mostly men. Some women also do. Whilst there, if you start acting in that disorderly manner after you're drunk, on the request of the owner, okay, you can be thrown out of that place. Some people may argue that, yeah, I paid to be in here, and for that matter, I should. Once you start committing a public nuisance,
you are out.
You are out.
And they can
and the law is clear on it.
And they can do that with the aid of a police. They can do that with the aid of their bouncers or a police officer. But when a police officer comes in, you should know that you are going to jail.
Not necessarily.
No,
but then you could be fined as well.
That should, because it's a misdemeanor.
No, to be fined, you have to be arraigned before court for a judge to impose the fine. Our situation is not like in certain jurisdictions where the police officer has the prerogative to fine you. Then when he sees you, he writes your ticket for you. Ours, you have to go all the way to court before you're fined.
But then you could go to the police station and maybe you'll be bailed before the trial.
You'll be bailed, you go home, then they do their investigations and whatever, and they arraign you before court, and then they go ahead and then. But don't forget, these places, another form of public nuisance is where these places are used to harbor thieves.
Yes.
Because there are these people, these thieves or armed robbers or whoever, who after whatever they do, they go sit at those places to have their fun.
Okay.
You understand? So if you knowingly, the law is clear, you knowingly know that this is the kind of jobs that these people are into, and then you keep them on your premises.
So we're looking at a lodging house, a public house, or any other place or institution where intoxicating liquor is sold.
Let's just put it this way. If you have a place, let's say a beer bar or a drinking spot.
Public entertainment center.
Public entertainment center. These are the new words these days. What you're under an obligation not to knowingly harbor people like that.
Yeah.
And also to make sure that when you harbor people, when people are at your place, you don't permit them to drink excessively and then behave in a riotous manner.
But then we also have to add that it is not just a thing of harboring thieves. We also have harboring prostitutes.
That, as for prostitution, is a whole chapter on its own.
Yeah, and the whole prostitution is illegal in Ghana.
Exactly.
So if you harbor them, they are part of those people that if you harbor,
my sister, I don't even want us to go to prostitution.
We can get into prostitution
because one of my issues with even the law on prostitution is that the law itself doesn't even define who a prostitute is.
But the law does not talk of just knowingly. You could also unknowingly harbor them. And where you unknowingly harbor them, it still opens you up to that penalty.
Yeah, but the thing is that when you're knowingly and it comes to your notice, you understand, you're under an obligation to report it.
Yes.
Because there are certain penalties attached to people who run these entertainment centers, who, if at a certain point in time, they harbor these people. One, for the first one, it says what? Your license will be taken away if they realize that this is what you've gotten yourself into. Secondly, if it goes on again, your license will be forfeited. Yeah. And then on the third impulse, it says that particular place will not be given a license to run an entertainment center at all because it's a known place for what? Harboring such people.
So at this point, you are enumerating the penalties.
The penalties attached. The penalties
apart from the general fine that could come your way.
Because the general fines, people may think that because I'm running my place, it doesn't affect me in any way. You, the owner of the place, you may lose your license to run a place. Let's not forget that to have a beer bar or an entertainment center,
you need a
license to operate it.
Yes.
So if you do not have a license, you do not have to operate it. And for those who are running theirs without licenses now, I'll please plead with them to go get the license.
Very well. Then we can look at the issue of throwing rubbish on the streets, in the gutters, and all around town.
A very important issue.
A big problem.
Very big problem. It's what everyone is suffering in this country. You can be living in your house, a very good residential area, and then what happens? Somebody gets up, fill his whole house. I mean, he has refuse in his house.
Council sounds like a victim.
Oh, yes, it's true. I mean, then you get up in the morning, you come and heap that particular rubbish in front of your house, knowing very well that you have not eaten that particular product. The law is clear on it. It amounts to public nuisance.
One of the problems we are suffering as a nation is enforcement.
Okay.
Enforcement of the law is very poor and very weak, and it's very hurting because most of us, the lucky ones, I'll put it, have all traveled abroad before. We see how the people run their systems. We see how you are supposed to drop your rubbish into the dustbin and all that. You come back to Ghana, you can you can see a rubbish bin provided for you, but you decide to do the opposite.
You actually walk by it and then put it by the dustbin instead of putting it in the dustbin.
I have seen
very well,
a Caucasian, a white person, throw trash from her car while she was driving on the streets.
It's because we are doing it.
And this was on the ring road. And I was shocked.
It's because we are doing it. So it has become...
It looks normal, but actually it's not supposed to be done.
Because this woman will definitely not do this in her country.
Exactly.
But you see, the matter now is, what are our law enforcement and our public health people doing when it comes to these things? Because these are all misdemeanors that are punishable.
I also look at it from the angle of, what are we doing as individuals? Because when something like that happened, I was driving, I couldn't have written down her number. Yes. I tried, and by the time I got to the nearest police station, I had forgotten some of the, the digits to her car number.
Yes, that's understandable.
But then we have to join hands because the law enforcement institutions have their own challenges. And it's our duty as citizens of this country to help them to do their work.
I agree with you to a certain extent. But my issue is this. Let's not move it to a social setting. This is Law Express.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the law and those who are supposed to enforce the law.
But we
There's so little. Don't forget, if we're even going into arrest,
yes,
what a policeman can effect an arrest that when you and I effect the arrest in the same manner, we'll be in trouble for unlawful arrest.
But the fact of the matter is that who are the people that Law Express is targeted at? The everyday person who is watching us now. And the whole idea is that in as much as we get them to understand what the law provides on paper, we also have to let them know what their responsibilities are in helping this law to be operational.
fine, I agree with you. In allowing the law to be operational, there are supposed to be certain categories of people who uphold the law. You understand? Our target audience, fine. We are telling them this is it, this is that. But they are, to some extent, they'll also be stuck in their ways. But it brings us back to the custodians of the what? The law itself. You understand? Don't forget, I started by saying that enforcement is very poor. You understand? If we let people know, or to some extent, we let them understand that this is actually public nuisance if you throw refuse out, and it's punishable by so and so and so, and they let them know that what you have done is actually an offense, I don't think people will continue doing it. It's because people get away with it day in, day out, and there's nobody to enforce it.
And that is why I'm saying that the people who have been given the primary responsibility to enforce these laws are not omnipresent.
Sure.
So it is up to us to let, for instance, you wake up in the morning like you were trying to explain, and somebody comes to dump rubbish there. You are likely to know which household that came from.
So then I have to take the responsibility upon myself to report them.
Exactly. And when they are punished, other people would also be deterred.
See the example and they will be deterred.
But people feel it's a waste of time. And that is why people keep getting away with it. And then it keeps recurring.
No, then it comes back to the same point that he's been talking about, that enforcement in this country is
I will
very,
agree
very
to the
difficult.
extent that if you take that step and take the trouble to report to the authorities and they don't act on it, then we can talk about the issue of enforcement.
So then your advice basically is
where
that
they are
the
challenged numerically, and then you expect them to have eyes in everybody's household, that will be difficult.
I see your difficulty too. I see your difficulty too. I can't help it, but I can see your difficulty.
I mean,
but let's not forget that this rubbish in front of somebody's house, that's not the only thing. People who walk around defacing people's posters.
Yes.
And affixing posters on people's homes.
But you have to notice that the posters have to be with permits. Yes.
I agree.
Some of them also paste, posters there without permits.
Yeah. If the poster is there without permit and you deface it, it's understandable. Even the law provides that you can't put a poster on my wall.
Yes.
My home, my wall, without informing me.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
If you're going to do an act like that, you're supposed to inform me. If you do not inform me, it is public nuisance.
So essentially what we are saying is that where you willfully deface a public lawful notice, which could be a billboard, a placard, whatever it is, you will be opening yourself up for criminal prosecution. In the same way, where you deface a building or dwelling of some other person without the person's consent, and by defacing, we're looking at even graffiti, painting. Listen, you may think you are beautifying it, but defacing is defacing. We'll be right back after this commercial break, where we'll talk about unlawfully releasing animals into another's property or into the space of the public. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Still to come on Law Express.
Releasing cattle into another person's farm. It amounts to public nuisance. For instance, you know what is happening in Agogo, for instance, where, the farmers, the Fulani herdsmen, they are supposed to be guarding their cattle, and they will actually release these cattle and they will destroy people's farm. It amounts to public nuisance and it's punishable under the laws of Ghana.
I think public nuisance is a very big issue in Ghana, especially when you're in the comfort of your home and there's a church close by. It is okay to have church services on Sundays, but when the church service continues for, say, throughout the week, it becomes a problem.
When the church is being placed in the community where, let's say, isolated area where people are, and the church make noise, they also injure the people's their privacy. And I think as the ethics comes in the ministry, the churches know how they should lower their sound, because it's not about, the noise that they make that bring the presence of God down, but about the sound that they make that bring the presence of God down.
Mates have no respect. No matter who you are, they'll be insulting you. Today, for instance, when I was coming, they were fighting about the fare. The mates were fighting, and sometimes the mates too, they cheat. And the drivers too will be opening their music, you can't even receive calls and other stuff. And the pastors too that preaches in the cars. We all go to church. We all serve God. So for the preaching in the buses, I think it has to be reduced because they've also been making noise. They'll be shouting in the car. Whilst you have to, think, refresh your mind where you're going, have some peace of mind. Sometimes you may not be in the mood of listening to them, but because we all go to churches on Sundays.
Evangelism is all right, but then it shouldn't be to an extent where you annoy the person more than you make them listen. You understand? If the atmosphere is convenient, then you get the person's attention more than you sort of offend the person. Because if the person is offended, at the end of the day, the person won't listen.
One of the major problems, again, I feel is worrying me a lot. It's about the cars, the motorbikes and stuff. They keep on horning for no reason.
You see a lady dressed in the way that proposes so much. Sometimes dress and expose their bodies and they expose their breasts and then their thighs all over. I mean, it's not helping. It's not helping because we are living in a civil society where women should know how to dress. And you see, when you're a woman dressed that way, it talks much about where you are coming from because it tells you whether you're coming from a home or you're coming from just, anywhere.
It actually worries a lot because we are in this decent community and then we don't understand why the foreign people dress up, because that is what is influencing our youth here. They always want to copy from, our foreign world, but it is accepted there in a way. It doesn't mean that outside public nuisance is not a problem. It's a problem worldwide. But wearing something to trigger your other opposite sex or something is not the best thing or the ideal thing to do. I wouldn't come to you to come and tell you why are you wearing this or why are you wearing that. But biblically, consider me a pastor. I see you in a nice dress. I'm human. I have feelings. That is natural. I can't do anything about it. So if I see you wearing something, exposing some part of your body that can trigger me, you worry me in a way. So I think we have to deal about it, and then our religious people should come together, our legal people should come together, and then find a possible way to resolve this issue.
Noella, when we talk about one of the offenses, which is very, very necessary, that is releasing cattle into another person's farm, it amounts to public nuisance. For instance, you know what is happening in Agogo, for instance, where, the farmers, the Fulani herdsmen, they are supposed to be guarding their cattle, and they will actually release these cattle and they will destroy people's farm. It amounts to public nuisance and it's punishable under the laws of Ghana. So people have to notice that when you have animals in a particular confined place, you have to make sure that you take care of them so that they will not go overboard, destroy people's property. That amounts to what? Public nuisance.
See, the law is clear. It talks about unlawfully releasing those animals. The law takes into the fact that, yes, you may be lawfully allowed to keep those animals in an impound, but the moment you allow those animals to get out of their confined zone, then whatever action they go on to do, you are even personally liable in civil matters if they destroy people's property, let alone the fact that they are out there causing the public some form of distress because of people. Don't forget, there are some people who are even scared of cattle.
Well, I will also look at it from the angle of not just the animals moving from a confined space, but also the noise from the animals. When the animals, I don't know how to...
and the droppings and littering the whole place.
I just think that it's too gross to mention. The stench that could emanate from all of that.
Exactly.
If it causes annoyance, trouble, or some discomfort to somebody or to the general public,
it will amount to public nuisance.
People also look at, I think we should also touch on throwing stones in a public place.
Yes.
Also, we could talk about noise in town. Boys will
even doing noise, at public places like the court premises.
Those people who drive around with the generators at the back of trucks, selling CDs and playing that is public nuisance number one.
That is where they have not been licensed, because sometimes the local authorities give them permits to do that. But where you do not have a permit to embark on that kind of campaign, then it is public nuisance.
But why would something like that, will you even give a permit for
Why would you
something
give a permit for something like that?
Well, it's part of regulation, and it's
But, I
one
mean,
of the
it's very
ways that the
pathetic,
local
and then they have to
authorities
actually
raise
look at
funds
it.
to help in their day-to-day
But
runnings.
I think maybe some people will also go overboard and they don't have permits. So we just employ them to make sure that those who have permits are allowed to do it, and we just have to bear with them. And those who don't have permits are dealt with under the law, because that is a clear-cut form of nuisance.
You know that there should be reverence in a place of worship.
That is correct.
So where you go to a place of worship, be it a church, a mosque, a temple, and you do not behave reverently, then clearly, you know,
It's very, very
That's public
subjective.
nuisance, because there are a whole lot of people who have decided to come to church or who have come to the mosque to pray. Then you decide to be of a riotous or quarrelsome nature. That is not the place to even be. Who fights in church?
No, but seriously, how do you actually determine that you are behaving reverently? Because
Well,
it's very,
the
very difficult, because
standard
you have
council-
actually gone to church where you see the pastor will actually say, can you actually lift up your chair? And then
Yeah, but
they will
those
do
are-
it. And then people, after they have done
been
it,
asked
people
to do that.
Exactly.
What about
After
that issue
when
in
people
Kenya
have
where the
actually
pastor
done it-
asked them to go eat rubbish and they went and
Yes,
eat
they
rubbish?
actually-
Is it also
and then all
grass? Sorry.
those are things they consented to. We are looking at things or behavior or actions from you which annoys or make people uncomfortable.
No, but my
See,
or
that
put you
wouldn't you
into
be
trouble.
Noella, my issue
So
here-
if the
my
pastor
issue-
says that you should all raise your chest,
I mean,
you are all doing it.
Oh,
you
no, hold on.
consented.
I'm not done. I'm not done with my line of argument. I'm actually saying that, for instance, if he actually says that lift your chairs and actually do something.
That is
Oh, no,
reverence.
I'm
It's
coming.
part
I'm
of
coming.
worship.
I'm coming to it. So then after everything is done,
Okay.
I mean, personally think that you can actually do it when the pastor has not given any particular
Oh,
order.
you are carried by the Spirit. It depends on where you are. It
Now
depends
then-
on what
now-
church you are.
Oh.
And remember, in the house of God, there's liberty.
Oh, no. I mean, we cannot actually bring spiritual things when it comes to law anyway.
Yes, but then somebody has to report. And if they accept it in wherever you worship, that it's okay for you to jump on you when you are caught. You know, remember, they have ushers in there. So they may try to control the situation where it's getting violent. But then people ought to know that, I'm sure the law is looking at extreme situations of you insulting,
the pastor,
attacking,
or
fighting.
going to slap someone without
Yes.
his consent,
Yes.
and saying that, I mean, okay, what if somebody slaps the pastor or slaps somebody in the church and says that he was carried on by the Spirit?
Well, that becomes a thing
That's
of,
a violent behavior.
is it unreasonable? Is it an interference to worship? Then
It
we
will
know.
fall under that. And it clearly looks like it's public nuisance.
will
Let's
be
not
public
forget, what
nuisance.
you're talking about can be likened to another example where people blatantly block the road.
Yeah,
Very,
for
very
whatever
important.
they want to do.
Especially
Without
when it's
permits.
funeral, without permits. Sometimes you are driving around and they will say that, oh, this road is blocked, this road is blocked. Before you went, they don't even have licenses to do that.
So, Mahama, extinguishing or damaging street lamps.
That I have a big problem with, because I don't even understand why you should even damage it in the first place. Because that particular street lamp is there for us. It serves as a form of security. It lights up your path. So if you blatantly, with the clear intent to damage it, go ahead and do so, I think it's one of the clearest forms of public nuisance ever.
It's so glaring that you don't even need to even talk about it. Because you see, how can we actually use the taxpayers' money to put products on the street or machines on the street, and then you go ahead to destroy them? That is clear as public nuisance. I think the public should be very careful. Some people are stealing these bulbs. You know, we'll take the opportunity to address the public and say that those things amount to public nuisance. And when you are caught, you'll be prosecuted under the laws of Ghana.
We admit that there are certain instances, there are accidents on the road.
Yeah.
And when accidents happen, these things do fall off. Fine. When those things happen, I think one of the remedies should be that, in as much as it happened, the person involved, if everything is okay, should be called and spoken to. And then whatever should happen, should happen. You understand? I'm not saying that the person should pay for the street lamp. You understand? I'm saying that, what I'm trying to say is that when such things happen, we all acknowledge that there's an accident. But you should inform the authorities.
Noella is actually laughing because she knows definitely that this is not going to happen.
No, but you see, if you don't inform the authorities, they wouldn't know that the street light is gone off.
What happens to routine maintenance, routine?
That's
you
But
know,
it's an
topic for
accident.
another-
That's an accident.
That's
What he's
another
actually
topic.
talking about is an
What
accident.
rather shocks me sometimes is, at what point do people go and steal from the streets? You know, it's a street lamp, it's high up there. Look at the trouble you would have to
be
go
amazed.
through to climb up. You need a ladder. You need so much.
No.
And this is a busy street. Is it that nobody sees these people, or they pretend to be working for the state? Because I can't just imagine how it happens.
You know, all I can say is determination. Determination and perseverance. Perseverance generates success. That's all I can say. Because don't forget, even thieves, before they go and steal, they pray. To ask for.
I didn't know about that. I'm curious. I want to know how he got to know this. But then, assembling for idle purposes. This is young people in the neighborhood. They just get up and then assemble together at one place. You know, it could be a public space, but they're mostly open spaces on the streets, around the streets. Just people don't know that this actually is a criminal offense.
Yes, it's the amounts to.
And then you refuse to disperse, especially where you've been asked to disperse, and you refuse to do that.
Yeah.
You know, when you assemble, there are certain assemblies that are known as lawful assemblies.
Yes.
Don't forget, it's not for anything that our dear police want us to inform them whenever we want to even go on a procession or anything, so that they can provide us with what? Security and safety.
Exactly.
So if for no apparent reason you people have decided to gather at a certain spot without any explanation, if you are asked to disperse from the place, you are supposed to.
Because the subject matter here is what? Idle gathering, because you have been asked specifically to disperse and you are not dispersing. How do we know what you are about to do? That's why we actually inform you that
this
disperse.
Public place, maybe it's a place where people pass, people walk
mostly
by.
On the road.
Mostly on the road, so you'll be impeding people's movements.
You might be causing obstruction.
Well, the Constitution allows you free movement. And then somebody, because of their gathering, are stopping you from moving. No, that's public nuisance. And it should not be condoned.
Especially when you are asked to disperse, then you do not disperse.
What about the situation where there's a fire outbreak and you've been asked to help, extinguish the fire and you refuse?
That is also
our laws.
That is also public nuisance. There are certain things that you should be able to help.
And with this, the standard is even higher. You should help to extinguish that fire to the best of your ability.
You see, the issue is that with something like fire, we are not saying run into the fire. You understand? We are just saying provide certain amenities around to help you distinguish it.
Support.
Exactly. If you have buckets, if you have anything to support.
With sand, whatever.
Exactly, yes.
This should be
it's actually looking at the human aspect of the law. So that when we actually ask you that, do you have this in your house to help put out the fire? You do not tell them that you don't have it, and then later on we find out that you actually have it.
But it's important for us to make our viewers understand that the call to come and assist should have been made by an officer or somebody of with some authority, and not just like your next door neighbor asking you to come into his house to help him quench fire. I mean, that one.
Yes, because there is always the subject of fear and all that. That's how come people don't want to go close to fire.
Don't forget that this same act provides again for people willfully and indecently exposing the body of the person in public. You understand? Or for the public view. Or exposes the body of another person in a place with the intent of insulting somebody.
Yes. So it's actually a two-way thing. First, exposing yourself simpliciter and in public. And also exposing yourself with the intention to insult somebody. So that thing that people do where they turn their backside and they insult.
Exactly.
That is one example.
Yeah, that's a very clear example. It happens in the universities.
It's so gross.
It's so gross in public
areas. But that's
for
fun, please allow.
Oh, I understand.
But some people do it when they're actually in a fight. Some people do it seriously.
Exactly. And sometimes even in English football and all that, sometimes
that happens too.
Yes, in the very smaller teams, sometimes it happens, It's very gross. But we are talking about our jurisdiction anyway.
Yeah.
It amounts to public nuisance. When you actually do that, you cannot do that.
And then just exposing yourself, like you just stand there and then you do it.
It says with intent to insult. So
that is one part of it. But then also exposing yourself to the view of the public. It's a nuisance.
It's a nuisance.
I don't consent to see your private parts.
Nobody woke up this morning to say, I'm coming out to come and see your private parts.
Yes.
Especially when I pay to come for a show. I'm not expecting to come see body parts.
Exactly.
If I want to see body parts,
I understand that.
I know where to go to.
I know.
Well, we should also look at this situation where you decide to pee or, relieve yourself in public.
Yeah.
By so doing, you end up exposing yourself.
Yes, because it amounts to indecent
and
exposure.
That is also nuisance.
That is also nuisance because there's a lot of talk about this thing now because of what has happened. We don't want to go into it because the matter is in court. But if you actually expose your private part, in public, it amounts to
Public nuisance. It's very indecent.
It's indecent exposure. It then amounts to public nuisance, and the public has to be, they have to be
This is just a
aware.
thing of common sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
why do we
exactly.
wear
Well,
clothes?
you should just bear in mind that it's a misdemeanor. So.
It's a misdemeanor anyway, but
Well,
people
there's-
have to be cautious.
We have to eat. And why you are not a vegetarian, you eat meat.
Yes.
And that is why we have slaughterhouses provided.
Yes.
So when you decide to, slaughter your animals elsewhere, some people just come to the roadside and then just
Slaughter
slaughter
it.
animals on the streets. So, and then sometimes they clean the
Yes.
animals there,
Sometimes
leave
they
the
bend
stench
ties.
and all of that. That is a criminal offense.
It's public nuisance because our local authorities have provided for designated areas where these acts are supposed to be performed. So some people, they have their spiritual reasons and their religious reasons why they would want to kill certain animals in certain ways. Fine. But the law has provided for places where these can be done. If you do not obey the law and you do it in an open public place, you have committed a form of public nuisance and you are culpable. And it is a criminal offense.
Still to come on Law Express.
Those are very good friends who decide to fight in public, who decide to disturb other people in public, should know that it's a misdemeanor. Yes. Fighting in public is a public nuisance.
Even behaving violently in prison or in custody, people go to the police cells to fight again.
It's
all places.
It's public nuisance.
I mean,
and those who also are the fight promoters, those who shout "Sayo, Sayo," they are all
also public
yeah,
nuisance.
yile, they are all part of it.
No, it depends on where you are saying the yile. I would like to take us back to the issue of releasing a wild dog.
Yeah.
That is something that is very common because many people keep either dogs or cats
at home.
Now, where you release your dog or it goes to commit some kind of nuisance or injury or, it causes some annoyance, after the case has gone to court, the court may order that animal be destroyed, especially where it's a very wild dog.
Yeah.
And it's maybe in the habit of attacking and injuring people. That kind of dog may be ordered to be killed, especially where it's killed somebody. I mean, you cannot reasonably be expected to go and then retrain your dog, which has taken somebody's life.
There are some of these animals, when you talk about dogs, some of them, when they taste blood, it's very difficult to take it away from them. So in those instances, when you have a pet that you are quite close to and it has to be put down, you're going to be very sad. But on the whole, we all are under an obligation to keep these animals. It's not for anything that you write on your wall, beware of dogs. Or sometimes some people even put it, beware of wild dogs.
Yeah.
Fine. That means that if you're allowing anybody onto your property, you are supposed to provide the person with that with some form of safety. Because if I have seen it, technically I will not come into your house. So if I decide to come, you're supposed to allow me some form of, some form of safety by keeping those dogs, whether locked up or whatever. Then now, if you're under the obligation to make sure that I'm safe in your house, how much more those who are outside your wall?
Yeah.
Why then if for whatever reason, let's say a miracle, that dog leaves the house and goes out, that's public nuisance in the first go, because some dogs, when they even get onto the street, nobody else can pass.
Yeah.
They can hold the whole neighborhood to ransom. Nobody can move around, nothing. Let alone this dog going out there and chasing everybody up and down. You cause panic. And that is nuisance.
So it means that everybody that has a dog has the responsibility to keep the dog well enough so that that particular dog will not go and actually bite someone to an extent of even killing
I'm
the
going
person.
to rewind us back to the point where you were talking about, you were talking really passionately about people coming to push rubbish in front of another's house. The law actually provides that where that rubbish is sitting in front of your house, prima facie, it is assumed
that it's your
that
rubbish.
It is your rubbish,
Yeah,
and you
correct.
put it there,
Yeah.
and you will be held liable
for it.
And that is where the seriousness of this whole
It
thing
will not
comes.
lie in your mouth to come and say that I didn't put it there, he brought it there. Then you have to go through the rubbish to show everybody that, there's a letter to show that, it's addressed to him, it's his rubbish. But if there's nothing to that effect to show that the rubbish doesn't belong to you, then the thing is found in front of your house.
Initially, she was trying to say that when it happens like that, as a responsible citizen, make sure that you take the right step, report, because this thing is becoming a norm.
Well, I like to think myself to be religious. So in as much as I believe in God and I'm a Christian, there are some churches that have not been licensed to be in some places. You see, the local authority has, you know, some regulations as to where you can site things, such that the town and country planning has places for industry. We have an industrial area for a purpose.
Exactly.
Now, if you decide to site something, a public place, it may not be proper to place a church right next to a school in some instances,
Yes.
because of the interaction.
Yeah.
If people do not follow this, okay, and they site places of worship in the heart of the residential area at a place that's not been allocated, such that they interact with people in a way that annoys them every day, at dawn, throughout the night, and all of that. That is public nuisance.
That is a gross example of public nuisance.
But then, because of how religious we are,
Yes.
and how careful we are not to touch the anointed and do the prophets no harm,
Yes.
we end up letting some of these things go. And as a result, chaos is what, you know, becomes the norm.
I was in court some time back and I saw a very senior lawyer whose house was very close to a church, and he had actually been able to get an injunction against that particular church, because what had happened was that they were actually worshiping all night throughout the whole month. So he went to town and country planning, and then he took an action in court and he got the injunction. So sometimes it's very, very difficult when it comes to church, because we are very religious.
And some people in your neighborhood who
would
may
think
be
that you are a
part
witch
of-
or a wizard.
May be part of the church also.
Exactly. So in Ghana, it's a very, very
It's a
difficult thing.
very touchy subject. It is a very touchy subject.
Churches being
But
being located at what residential areas. It's very, very difficult.
It's very
to
touchy,
come.
and I believe strongly that some steps need to be taken to make sure that the sound, they go measure these decimal sounds of whatever they're doing, and then make sure that the sound is curtailed. Other than that, then I think if they are going to go on rampage, almost every church
How
will
do
be
you
liable.
regulate the decibels of, you know, the sound of a church? And who goes around to enforce?
The EPA.
I look, yeah, but the officers may be in church on that Sunday. But that aside, that aside, I am also looking at putting in measures, because listen, we need these institutions in the communities. It's needed. You need a church in your area. You need a hospital in your area. The same way you need a police station in your area. But how about we have some regulations as to the kind of material you need
to put up
the church, such that you use some soundproof materials so it doesn't disturb people.
Especially when the church is in a residential
because
area.
it is not just the act of worship, but the act being unreasonably done, such that it interferes with somebody's rights.
Exactly.
And with public nuisance specifically, we're looking at the rights of the general population.
Let's not forget one thing. Those are very good friends who decide to fight in public, who decide to disturb other people in public, should know that it's a misdemeanor. Yes. Fighting in public is a public nuisance.
Even behaving violently in prison or in custody, people go to the police cells to fight again.
It's
all places.
It's public nuisance.
And
those who also are the fight promoters, those who shout "Sayo, Sayo," they are all part of
public
nuisance. They are all part of it.
No, it depends on where you are saying the yile. In my other life, when I was a sports journalist, I mean, it's okay to be at the boxing ring and shouting yile. You've paid for that. You've paid for that.
That's why
but then, but that is a public place.
No. That one is the license. That's a license fight.
Nuisance here that says you can't sing.
Exactly.
You can't sing indecent songs, but you can't sing decent songs and all of that in public. There's also a provision for that, but you know, there's a concession sometimes to everything. My dear Vandal friends will tell you
Power nights?
Power nights and all of that.
I mean,
there's
they
a
sing
concession
and
to
they
all
sing
of this.
songs.
Even though it's public nuisance, there's a concession to it.
No, but Power Night is an event. That
So that is it. That is the concession.
That is different.
So that will not amount to public
concession.
Does that mean that the law does not apply?
The law applies in that this is a regulated organization
Yes,
that has done this, okay?
I agree with you that it's a concession. That is why it's allowed that we should what? We can go ahead and then you can have what you want to have.
In wrapping up, I would like for us to recap on the criminal liability for committing the offense of a public nuisance or an offense in the nature of a public nuisance, and also the time limitations, you know, available for prosecution of such offenses.
Noella, when it comes to time limitation and it comes to public nuisance,
Yeah.
everyone that commits that particular offense, the timing is 1 year. That is within that 1 year, that is at the time the offense was committed, within that particular time, the timing has to be 1 year. If it exceeds that time, you are statute barred. You
So
cannot
what
take
you are
any
saying
action.
is that from the day of the commission of the crime,
Exactly.
you have 1 year within which you can be prosecuted.
Exactly.
Failing which it becomes a free case.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then
Let's
statute bad.
Let's not forget, these are all misdemeanors.
Yes.
And these misdemeanors attract penalty units in certain cases. But in as much as they attract penalty units, it's still at the discretion of the
And
judge.
penalty units, he means fines.
Yeah, I mean
and
fines.
they range,
And
you know,
in Ghana,
from
one
case to
penalty
case.
Like in the
unit
case-
is 12 Ghana cedis.
Yes, it's
And
important.
for-
So you can do the
for
calculations.
instances
Why
where
is 15?
the
then
people
you
who
know
like
times
fighting,
12.
the people who like fighting, but they are entitled to a fine not exceeding 10 penalty units.
So we're looking at just 120 Ghana cedis in the
Exactly.
maximum
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
fighting.
Maybe what we are discussing here, maybe we are trying to say something that maybe the law should be reviewed.
Exactly.
I totally
When-
agree because
exactly when
somebody
it
say
comes to
I'll
the
fight and I'll
amounts.
pay.
Yeah. But
That
that's
is
why at
true.
the end of the day, it still stands at the discretion of the judge.
Also,
Yeah.
he can decide
Side-
that in order to deter you, he
yeah.
has to
It may
find
be harsher or, yeah.
exceptional
So-
circumstances.
so it's
Or
still-
maybe put you in for some time.
Yes.
It's the same thing, yeah. So it's all still at the discretion
both.
of the judge.
Yes,
yeah, or
or
both,
both.
yeah. Yeah.
Totally. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on Law Express. So you've been listening to Samuel Dubik Mahama and Yao Osei-Owusu, both private legal practitioners who also double as law lecturers. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
It is important to know that in our day-to-day interactions, our actions definitely affect our neighbors and others in the general society. It is therefore important for us to stop and think where our actions overstep the boundaries. Bear in mind that your rights end where others begin. Today, our topic has been public nuisance. This has been our show, Law Express. Goodbye.